Beginning of parshas Bechukosai, Torah says in Bechukosai Teilechu. You're gonna go with the Torah. Rashi explains. It's referring to learning Torah. Shitiu amelim b'Torah. Rashi quotes the Torah's Kohanim. That when a person learns, you should toil. You should exert a lot of effort. Try very, very hard. Put a lot of energy into it. There's much that is said on this topic over here. Bechukosai Teilechu Shitiu amelim b'Torah. If you look at Dor Chaim, he has over 40 explanations of this pasuk. One of the explanations is even when you're going on the way, when you're traveling, you should learn Torah. Even if it's Heilechu, lashon of halicha, going. Even when you're going, you should be learning Torah. They ask a question, Im Bechukosai Teilechu. Zois chukas ha-Torah. It says in Parshas Chukas, the Torah is a chok. A chok is a mitzvah that we perform, and we don't know why we are performing it. How exactly is the Torah a chok? There's many explanations for this. One explanation is based on the Gemara in Kedushin. Barati Yitzhahara Barati Torah Tava. Shem says, I created this evil inclination, and I created the Torah, which is the spice or the antidote, the potion to fight back. So we don't understand how it works. When a person sits and learns, it fights back against his evil inclination. But nevertheless, it does. That's why it's a chok. When a person is traveling, when he's going on the way, happens commonly that someone is waiting online, waiting at a doctor's office, wherever it is, he's waiting. So what is the person doing when he's waiting? Person's watching his kids. He's at the playground with them. Right? Anon bididon, inun bididu. They're doing their own thing. We're doing our own thing. So what are the parents going to do now? What are they going to be involved with? It happens that a person is driving, and especially during traffic, he's commuting to and from work. He knows the route, right? Why wouldn't a person put on a shear and listen to Torah? If he has a drive that is already significant, okay, fine. If he's doing local driving, it's a four-minute drive. What are you going to get done exactly in 4 minutes, right? Even so, it builds up, but you could really focus on these long drives. We discussed in Sefer Yeshua, Perek Al Pasach, about the concept and the importance of a meilus b'Torah. We spoke out over there that people have to realize success is based on small amounts that a person does. Any small amount that a person does is considered success. That's what we have to realize. Every single line, if a person realized that, it would help him to get more serious with the learning. There's a fascinating Gemara in Maseches Eruvin. The Gemara in Eruvin on Nundalid relates a story with Rabbi Preda. Rabbi Preda, this Gemara is spoken about all over the place. Rabbi Preda had a Talmud, and this student was unable to grasp the material easily. You would have to teach him 400 times in order that he could understand the material at hand. So there's a lot to say about this Gemara. The Gemara over there continues and says that one time Rabbi Preda had to go somewhere else. So he told the Talmud, all right, let's go. We gotta speed it up a little bit, whatever. I gotta go. So after the 400th time, the student didn't understand the material. So he said, what's the difference? You usually understand it for the 400th time. So he said, once the rabbi said that he was in a rush and I didn't focus, and so he said, okay, no problem. I couldn't focus. So Rabbi Preda told him another 400 times, 800 times. As a result of that, Hashem said, what do you want as reward for this? It's a tremendous thing. What do you want as reward? Right? Do you want 400 years extra for your life? Or do you want that you an entire generation will merit the world to come. So in the end, we prayed this at the ladder, world to come. And Hashem said, because you said that, I'm going to give you both. It kind of reminds me of with Shlomo. Could have asked for Shalom Melech wealth, or he could have asked for something important, wisdom. He asked for wisdom, and then he got both, right? Okay. So, the Gemara is clearly emphasizing the positive attributes that the rabbi had, the capabilities that he had. We'll come back to that in a moment. But let's talk about why don't people focus on the amazing efforts of this Talmud? That he had the ability, and he, even though he couldn't understand, to literally go over it 400 times. Why don't they talk about that? Now, obviously, this student had some sort of uh, unusual, maybe disability, you could say, or educational issue, right? Obviously, because it doesn't usually take 400 times to understand a topic. Pretty unusual. So it's a lot. 400 times. So one explanation for this, Chaim Shmulovitz, Zatzal points out that, when it comes to this student over here, they do say he makes that point. He was impressed with it, that the student had such a willpower. But Chaim Kanievsky says that the student didn't receive reward because he was obligated to learn Torah. If he couldn't understand the material until it was after the 399th time, until it was 400, you're still obligated to learn. So that's why, from the student's perspective, it wasn't as impressive. It says in Pirkei Avos, Lo alecha malacha ligmor v'lo ata bin chorin lehivat limenu. No one said you have to learn the entire Torah. It's impossible to learn the entire Torah. You learn as much as you could. V'lo ata bin chorin lehivat limenu. But you're not free just not to learn. The real way to understand the depths of Torah is to learn it deep. Is to basically uncover every rock that you're capable of uncovering, that you know it's there. So there's going to be more rocks that you're not aware of. But you try to uncover it, you try to learn it well to the extent that you fix the material, you remember it, you're able to retain it off the top of your head. You're able to have a conversation with someone that day or in a couple of weeks, whenever it is, about the material that you learned. Right? For sure. That's what proper learning is. You're able to come out with a conclusion, and you understand how you got to that conclusion, and you understand the different opinions and how you got there.
Wait,
You come out.
was this Talmud? Did he had to learn this particular topic, or he could have learned something else?
Any topic that he was learning, Rabbi Prida had to teach him 400 times for him to understand it. Any topic. So let's go back to that point. So a person now, that's the proper way of learning, right? It gets tricky a lot of times because, in the world of people who are being kovei itim, most people are in some sort of program. Okay, so such as a daf yomi program. So they have a set time. Let's say what is the average daf nowadays? 45 minutes? You know better than me.
Yeah, 45
Let's say 45 minutes, okay? The Maggid Shir prepares the daf well, and he's able to say it over in 45 minutes. So that's great. Excellent. You're getting some Torah, right? But the best way, optimally, is to know all of Shas, right? And Shulchan Aruch, Torah, the Medrash, etc. There's a lot of Svarim out there, and to learn it in depth so you properly understand it, not just to rush through something, to know it, to retain the information, to review it many times so that you remember the information, to take notes, like what we do. So the reason why it becomes very tricky is because when a person isn't in a box, He's not an official program. Okay? He's making his own program, let's say. He's just trying to grow. He's trying to steig. He's trying to understand the material. A lot of times when there's no official pace that is made, so then it could get a person could easily get distracted. That's why let's bring back the daf for a second. That's why the daf is such a beautiful thing because trains leaving whether you like it or not, right? It's a machayev. It makes you go there. But there is a concept every single day, taking time, setting a block of time, and dedicating that to learning in depth. So going back to that mission of us, that's what it means. Lo alecha malacha ligmor. You don't have to finish it. Lo ata bin chorin libatel minah, but you're not free just not to do anything. You see, very commonly, people who are learning the whole day, right? Typically have a lot less intensity when they're learning versus someone who is dedicating that small block of time that he has because he's working most of the day. That when he's learning, you never see working guys, that they come to learn and they're basically sleeping when they're learning on that small amount of time. They're learning with a chavruz or something. They're there because they want to be there and they're trying to get as much done in as small amount of time as possible. The problem is if these guys who are learning full time realize how limited their time really is, also, not in comparison to the working people, but in comparison to themselves and how short their life is in this world, and how much Torah there is to learn, and how really amazing it is, then you wouldn't see such things. You wouldn't see people coming late as much as they do. You wouldn't see people coming early. You wouldn't see people with these extended bathroom breaks or coffee breaks, whatever people are doing. You stay in the base medrash and you sit there and you're Ritzifas B'Torah. And you learn straight, uninterrupted. That's what it is. But let's talk about this Gemara a little bit more.
Huh?
Let's go back now to the Rabbi Prida. So Rabbi Prida, he taught this Talmud 400 times. Someone who's at the level of Rabbi Prida, right? You have in the world of teaching Torah, of rabbis, of students, you have all different types, right? You could have a rabbi who's the head of a yeshiva, who's the head of a large shul. He's still a student. He has another rabbi who he looks up to, who he goes to for guidance. Even if that rabbi that who looks up to, even if he's not as smart, doesn't have as much Torah knowledge, everyone has to have a rabbi. It says in the first paragraph of us, Aseh lecha rav. Different rabbis have different types of students, not just on ages, but also on the level intellectually where they're holding and where they're holding in life in general. Wouldn't Rebbe Prida's time be much better spent around students who were more advanced, who could grasp the material better? Doesn't Rebbe Prida have better things to do than reteach the same exact thing 400 times? Hire a less advanced rabbi. In other words, isn't this bittul Torah for Rabbi Prida? It's a strong question when you ask it that way. People don't ask it that way because you have to have audacity and guts to ask it that way.
We talk about the quality of the quantity.
Exactly. We're talking about bittul Torah be'eichus u'bekamus, right? To strengthen this question, the Gemara Megillah, we've said this many times on Daf Gimel, it says Mevatlin Talmud Torah l'shmoy Megillah. We stop learning Torah in order to hear Megillah. Bittul Torah, we nullify learning Torah. What do you mean the Megillah is Torah? So many answers to this question. One of them is
The Eichus in the comments.
right. In
What
particular,
was
bittul
that?
Torah be'echus. It's a qualitative bittul Torah because
Just reading the Megillah.
you're just reading psukim. You're reading psukim. You're not going into the mafarshim. You're not learning the sugyas in the Gemara. You're not learning the Esther Rabbah. That's a shallow way of learning. The way of learning properly is you learn something properly. I always like saying there's learning, and then there's learning, right? Come on, there's a difference between the two. That being said, what is Rabbi Preda wasting his time for? It's a great question. I haven't seen this idea brought down. I haven't really researched this completely in depth. This particular story in Eruvin, just bringing up some points that I saw. But I think you have to say that this student had some sort of learning disability. It wasn't a normal situation. But nevertheless, we have to address that question. So, yeah, Leinu L'Shabeach over here, he says, the intention of Rabbi Prida was Yesh loimer kavanoso shel Rabbi Prida haisa shebederech halimud hazeh yisragel liknois es midas hamasinus v'asavanos. Rabbi Prida realized something very important over here. If I have to teach the same exact thing 400 times, that will cause me to be more of a patient person. Savlanus. Savlanus is very important in life and for learning Torah. We discussed, I think it was like around 11 years ago or so, the Vadim, the Revolbi had in Chelik Beis on Savlanus. SamarReblan.com under the Musa section. Highly recommend listening to those. Those are incredible. We're talking about listening to Torah in the car. Highly recommended. Under the Musa section, Ali Shore, patience, Savlanus. Someone came up to me, one of the guys who was in the Chabur then, after and said, "This is the best thing I've ever heard. The best Torah ever. Period. Period." That's what he said. And he actually typed the whole thing up. And if I'm not mistaken, I actually put it on the website. I think in the random museum section, maybe I put it there.
Wait, Salonis, what? What did he
Savlanus, the importance of patience.
about that particular shot? As
About
far as
that topic. About that topic. So I highly reference cross-referencing
no,
that.
but what did he hear? What did he hear?
You listen to the shir, you'll hear what he heard, why he said that. Just reference it. Um, you know, this especially applies to us who are living in New York, in the tri-state area where the hustle and bustle, everything's fast-paced in general in life now. But especially in New York, when you go out of New York, you say, why are people moving so slow? I mean, I already think that way on the road, especially these older cars that go very slow and at a red light, like after getting off, when it's like I'm always passing them. Like, what do you gotta go? It just takes so long to get to 40 on the 878 or wherever you're driving. But anyways, that's something else, right? Of course, all when you're driving in the speed limit, but just anything, right? Even sometimes when I'm walking, right? So there's two types of people, like Marshall. You go to, let's say, a zoo, right? So most of the people there have never been there. They don't know where they're going. They're looking at the map. They're walking slow, like they're just. But if you know exactly where you're going, you're going 3 times faster than them, right? You know exactly what's going. You don't need to look at the map. You know the entire place, right? So patience, though, is very important. Patience is incredibly important. See things doing slower, you wait on it. You wait on it. Patience. You say, oh, finally, that car in the single lane turned the other way, so now I could go at normal speed instead of going 10 miles under the speed limit. Like, why was that car going so slow to begin with? Okay, gosh. But patience is incredibly important. Instant coffee. Everyone wants instant Talmud Chacham. They want instant oishe, instant gratification. They want to become instantly very wise, pious, honorable, have a lot of wealth. That's not the way the real world works, and that's not the way that the Torah world works. There's no such thing. There's no instant coffee, instant Talmud Chacham. It's not a thing. It requires day in and day out, whether there's ups, whether there's downs, whether it's a cold day, whether it's a hot day, whether it's a winter day and it's freezing outside with crazy hail or snow, versus if it's the hottest day of the summer and it's schwitzing outside, which is not that bad in New York, to be honest. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter when it is, right? For a person to exert the energy, and the efforts into it. And by the way, if you research the topic, your average millionaire, they didn't get the money in one shot. It's over time. It's from being disciplined, which is very important for Torah also in mitzvahs. Discipline slowly but surely, putting away extra money every single week, every single month, every single year, building, investing the money in the right place. It's the same thing. This takes time. All of it takes time. Savlanis, patience. That's what Rabbi prayed to had. He realized the importance of this. Everyone would acknowledge the fact and agree that in order to teach someone something 400 times, that requires a tremendous amount of willpower, not just from the person learning the material, but from the person teaching the material. Tremendous patience for a person to work on his midos to get to that level. Every single additional time that Rabbi Preida had to repeat the information, he was acquiring more patience. That itself is a form of a melus b'Torah. That's a toiling for himself that is so difficult. And guess what? At the end of the day, they showed him from heaven, Rabbi prayed that you were right on your decision. And as a result of this, we're adding 400 extra years to your life. And now you're going to be able to achieve that which you lost, so to say. The time that you thought that you lost because you had to teach the material 400 times, you're going to get it back. They ask a question. Why does the Torah itself guarantee longevity if you honor your parents? So we learned about this in the past a little bit. We might have touched upon this. Torah says, "Kaveh esavicha v'esimecha," so that and you'll get longevity. And yarichim imecha, etc. Whatever. Why? One explanation is it's midah keneged midah measure for measure. Person takes of their own time. They go to their parents to help them out in whichever way that their parents need help. They take of their time, measure for measure. Since you took from your time, you're going to get back more. Same exact idea. Same idea. And that's specifically on parents that we're obligated to respect, not necessarily other people. But it could be that this idea would also apply to other mitzvah cases where a person gives up from their time, they'll get more back. For example, Hatzalah, whatever it is. That's what happened to Rabbi Preida. Everyone benefited in the end. Everyone. A person, remember this, La'olam lo'boim lidei hefsid mesavlanus. Person will never lose out in any area by having patience. Something that we need to know. Everyone wants success, but it requires patience. That's what we have to realize. A lot of times, a big issue with parents, grandparents, where they have difficulty watching kids, watching their own kids, watching their grandkids, is they get impatient. Perhaps the number one ingredient that you need for being close with your kids, your grandkids, is patience. It's in addition to love for sure, but the patience. They take a long time to do everything. Kids remind me of older people. Meaning kids are quicker in certain regards, but it takes time to strap them into the seats, to put the clothing on, especially if they fight back, to change a diaper, all these silly little things. You just wait on it, patient. That's what it is. Should be pointed out, everything that we said today about the patience, none of it pretty much was said when we discussed it with the Ali. None of it's repeat. If you go back over there, you'll see totally different sources. I'm purposely not repeating. Purposely not. But if you go back over there, you'll see totally different sources. You could combine the two. You'll have a very nice piece, very nice idea. There's a lot to say on Amelis B'Torah. Obviously it's something that I try to do very much, so I obviously connect to the topic a lot. I don't think time will allow to go through everything, but you should know that the Aleinu Shabbat has 30 pages. on this Rashi. Shityu Amelim B'Torah. 30 pages. You could read it in the Hebrew, you could read it in the English. Fabulous material. What?
The same?
The English always, they're always going to leave out a little bit. The Hebrew is going to always have more.
Okay.
So, so yeah, there's a fascinating story that he points out. And by the way, definitely cross-reference also the Sefer Yeshua, Parakal Pasuk Ches, the section on Amilos B'Torah. There are 10 different sections or so over there. This is, yeah. Aleph Ches, 1, 8. There's a story with the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim officially, that's really why we're here. So this Chabura, so to say, started around 15 years ago almost by now, close to 15 years ago. And we've had our ups and downs. And, it really started with Mishnah Brura. That's really what it was. Yeah. In Shariah, it started with Mishnah Brura. And I would add comments from different Sfarim. Kind of what we're doing now, just a little bit less in depth from the earlier sources before the Mishnah Brura, and also there's less that I quoted back then. Also, naturally, after 15 years, you gain a lot more knowledge, and your ability to research more in depth grows, right? So now we definitely learn it better. So we learn the Chafetz Chaim. So there was once a story with the Chafetz Chaim, and he had his son-in-law with him, Hirsch. And they spent hours on a very difficult topic, hours and hours on a difficult topic. And after all of this, the Chafetz Chaim wrote down a line and a half on what they learned together, and that was going to be the Mishnah Brura on that topic. A line and a half. So every single word had tremendous toil that went into that. So Reb Hirsch asked his father-in-law, Chafetz Chaim, are people going to know how much effort we exerted to, how much went into this line and a half, how much toil went into it, how difficult it was? Chafetz Chaim responded, let me tell you a story that happened with the Tsar in Russia. Tsar in Russia, there's a story of a father and son, and they were sent to Siberia to pave roads, to help with construction for highways, to widen it, to transport better, working day and night. Suddenly, the son asked his father, my dear father, after we complete this crushing labor, are people going to know, and we finish it up, are people going to know how much effort we put into this, or they're just going to speed down the road and they're not even going to think about it? How many people think about when they're driving down a beautiful, nicely paved highway? You go down the southern state, right? Once you're getting deeper into Long Island, you go down certain highways, the I-95. These are beautiful. They're paved nicely, scenic. They're nice. You go in these areas. How many people think, out of, let's say, 1 million drivers, 10,000 drivers, how many people think, wow, the people really did a great job building this. They must have spent a lot of effort. And that's with machinery. Okay? How many people think about that? The father responded, it doesn't matter. We're doing this for the Tsar. Who cares what people think? We have to do this. Answer the Chafetz Chaim. Forget about what people think. It doesn't matter. We're doing this for Hashem. Doesn't matter what people think. This is for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it applies to anything that we do in life. We're doing it for Hashem. Don't think about anything else. You're doing it for Hashem. It's a beautiful point over there that gets discussed. There's a whole section over here. Rav Eliyashiv and Rebbetzin Eliyashiv and all of the ways that she basically said her husband doesn't need to take care of anything, the 10 kids that they had, nothing. She sent them away on Pesach, before Pesach.
Wow.
Just go to the base measure. All of these incredible stories from Rav Eliyashiv to learn uninterrupted. Incredible stories, a whole section over there. an interesting question that's asked on a Meilus B'Torah as to when a Chaim Shmulevitz asked, why don't we stand up when a pregnant woman walks in the room? After all, the fetus that she is carrying, that she created, is learning the entire Torah and is a tremendous Talmid Chacham. So therefore, we should have to stand up for the fetus that she's carrying. Answers Chaim Shmulevitz, no. Since that Torah knowledge came without a Meilus, the child was literally spoon-fed that Torah, spoon-fed by an angel. Therefore, you don't stand up for it. No Avelis. No Amelus. It also reconciles as to why the Torah, he gets hit over here, and then he has a little mark under his nose. Why does that happen, and then he forgets all the Torah? One of the explanations is because Torah without toiling is not important. You forget it. Then you have the other question. So why were you taught in the first place? We addressed that in the past. You taught in the first place because it still affects you in some way. Similarly, once we're talking about fetuses, the question is asked by Yaakov and Esav. We understand why Yaakov wanted to get out when they passed the yeshiva. Excuse me, why Esav wanted to get out when they passed the place of idolatry? Because he didn't want to learn the Torah.
Right.
He wanted to get out. But why did Yaakov want to get out? One answer is because Yaakov realized the importance of learning Torah with amelus, with toil, which you weren't getting in the fetus. It's another answer. So in the Vilna Gaon, Sifter said this news, so it's brought that the Vilna Gaon was offered to learn Torah, to get taught from angels. And he denied it. He refused.
Wow.
Because there's no Amelus B'Torah. It's all about the toil, the toil. That's what it comes down to. So it's definitely a lot to chew on. Look, I personally got a lot of pleasure going through these 30 pages. Nalin Mishabeach. There's just so much to say on this. There's a story with someone came to the Sam Sofer once, and he didn't know much. And he was having a hard time keeping up. No one wanted to learn with him. Sam Sofer says, no, you take turns. Everyone took turns teaching and learning with him. Eventually, he became a big Talmid Chacham and a Rav. And he's actually quoted in the Chuvas of the Chassam Sofer. The Stipler, someone who I look up to greatly, said about himself that he was never smart. It's just that he had a lot of diligence, hasmada, amelus. And the Stipler writes in his Chai Olam that at the end of the day, what's the difference between the smart person and the average person? They're both going to know the material. It's just that the smart person will grasp the material quicker. But the difference between the smart person and the average person is that the smart person, once he grasps the material, he's going to say, okay, and he's going to move on. But the person who is more diligent to his average won't stop with the learning. And he will end up achieving more and getting further than the smart person. Deep idea. So it's all about the amelus. That's what it comes to. When I was learning by Rabbi Forst, before his stroke. Also, I remember 8 years ago, whatever, he would sit there and he wouldn't move.
Wow.
He would not move 3 hours. He wouldn't move. Eventually, he had to go to the bathroom, but you wouldn't move. Right? When you eat less, you don't need to go as often. Wasn't a big eater, but sit there and he would learn and he would go over and over and he didn't rush. I always thought, why is he going so slow? I'm already ahead of what. And we started from the same point because we're learning the same topic.
Yes.
But he would go slow. He would think about asking. And then I remember, because I would sit next to him for a few years. And he would turn to me and ask me a question on the sugya we're learning. I said, "Oh shoot, here we go." And usually I didn't know the answer. Sometimes I had what to say, sometimes, but that's a mailus. You used to tell me, said, when you learn sugya again, learn it as if you never learned it before. Forget about your notes. Forget about all of your whatever you have on the. Forget about it. Take a new sefer, learn it with nothing. That's how you approach a sugya. That's how you approach a sugya. That's a mailus batar. You know how many times have I forced Baba learned these sugyas? It's already all typed up already. It's far more printed and everything. It's a mailus batar. All right, Mitzvah Hashem will continue.
Let's go
Yeah.
to Rabbi Fourth.